And welcome to this week's IG Live. I'm excited today to be talking to Emily Bowen Cohen. She is the Jewish Muskogee author, or I should say creator, of the graphic novel Two Tribes, which is really wonderful. And my teenager and I both highly recommend it. And I also want to show off, I forgot to show you guys last time, I have our new posters, which these are available for free on our website. Go to the link in our bio and you can find them. The top one is the new poster for Read Your World Day 2025. That's from Colleen Kong Savage, so you can find that. And the bottom one is for our LGBTQ inclusive classroom kit, and it's by Federico Heredia. And so both of those you can print out for free from our website. Just go to the link in bio and you can find both of those. Again, the top one is the Read Your World Day poster, and the bottom one is for our free downloadable classroom kit. So be sure to get both of those. Hello, and again today we are talking to Emily Bowen Cohen, and we're going to be talking all about the importance of identity for kids and how to help them form a healthy sense of identity, and just the process of creating a graphic novel, which I think is really fascinating. We won't be having our IG Live on Thursday because of Thanksgiving. We are going to be having it on Tuesday, it's said, but at the usual time, 2 o'clock Eastern. Hello.
Hello.
Good to see
Good
you.
to see you too.
And I'm so excited to talk with you, as I mentioned, and when you were getting on. My son and I both highly recommend your book. I was actually
Thank you.
asking about, I was just talking to him about it, like kind of right when we were about to get on, and he was like, "Oh yeah, that was really good." He really enjoyed
Oh,
reading it. So,
oh,
well, why don't we go ahead and just go
sure.
ahead and jump in? And what was your journey to becoming an author? Although I really should say author
Yes.
illustrated, since it's a graphic novel. Well, is this something you always thought that you would do?
Well, I came into it. I came in. I always like to draw,
Mm.
and I thought I would tell my stories as an animator, and that's what I studied at school.
Mhm.
But the animation process just involves a lot of different people and a lot of moving parts. And so I was very excited when graphic novels, started really you started seeing them everywhere. I got really excited because you can sort of do all the parts, and it can really be your story. Um, so that was sort of how that part got started. And I knew I wanted to tell the story about a girl who's Jewish and Native American, because that is my background. And I have children, and when they were when they were in Jewish spaces, they were usually the only other Native American person there. And they were sort of facing the same issues that I had faced as a Jewish Native American child. Um, yeah, so that really prompted me to want to share with kids their age, you know, what Native American is all about, being Native American is about, and that we
Right.
still are here. So
Right.
it sort of started that
Yeah.
simply. Yeah.
Well, before we get into the story, it is such a wonderful graphic novel, and I am just curious about the process of it. I mean, it's
Yeah.
kind of interesting for me. You come from the background of animation, but so when you create the graphic novel, do you have the idea, like the text first and then the illustrations? Do they kind of happen at the same time? What is that like?
Yeah. I like going back and forth. I always start with the character
Mm.
first. Um, I can show you right now. Like
Amazing.
this guy, he's a new character, and I knew, like, for Two Tribes, I knew I wanted to make this Jewish Native American character, and I started to think about what she would look like. Um, that's Mia, yeah, who's modeled on my own daughter.
Aw.
Yeah, and so I really like just sort of thinking about who that character is going to be and what they're going to look like. Yeah, what they're like, it's so many different things. It's like what clothes they wear and what their room is going to look like. And then once I sort of get that in mind, I start to write it as a script.
Mm.
And then I go back and forth. Like I find that's really helpful for me, is to start with like a really bad really bad script, and then I'll go in, and then I can show you too. I'll do these thumbnail drawings. I don't know.
So cool.
Yeah, see? So like each
So neat.
panel is like a little is like a little rough drawing, and that helps me kind of make the story, carve the story into something that
Mm-hmm.
I like. Yeah. So
Does
it's a process of going back
that,
and forth.
I mean, when once you draw it, does that change the script, or I mean, kind of help it, you develop it because you can kind of visualize it better, or?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. When I start drawing the pictures and it's like, also it's a pacing. When I start to draw it out, I kind of think like I want this to be like this to see the vista of like a background, And that kind of then I think, well, what would be, it sort of helps me just sort of figure out the dialogue too, is
Right.
going back and forth. Yeah. Yes,
Interesting. I hadn't thought about
I
that.
love it. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about the story. I
Yeah,
mean, Mia, as we just showed, she's
sure.
a main character, Jewish and Native American. And one of the things that happens in the book is that her parents are divorced. So exploring both sides of her heritage becomes a lot more complicated, which is
Mm.
not exactly the same, but somewhat similar to your story.
Yeah.
So how are her feelings about her identity, or I mean, or we can talk just more generally, influenced by her relationship with both sides of her family? Because that's probably true
Yeah.
for a lot of kids. If your parents are divorced or if a parent has passed away, that makes
Yeah.
things more complicated. But in this case specifically, because the cultural background is so different, then that really influences how she thinks of herself, right?
Yes. Oh, absolutely. I mean, in Mia's case, because her father was divorced and the families have been apart for quite a while. When she's in Jewish spaces, just like in my case or in my daughter's and son's case, there's not a lot. There can be some um, ignorance about what the native culture. There's just like it seems very foreign. I guess that's what it is. She faces a lot of people in her life because she's just with her Jewish family who see her native heritage as very foreign.
Mm-hmm.
And so that affects her in one way. And then Mia, being separated from her native family, she she doesn't have the sort of ability to get knowledge directly from her family.
Right.
And yeah, so she has to rely on other things. She's a big reader.
Oh,
And so
yeah.
she picks up books. And I'm so glad that the Multicultural Kids blog and all of these other and the other work exists because these books that tell native stories don't always tell them in a way that is healthy for young native kids. Yeah,
I was
and
trying to see if I could find the picture. There it is, of
yes,
the
little
what she finds in her library.
yeah, which is I know it's getting a lot better,
Right.
and I'm librarians are the best,
Yes.
so I know they work really hard. But these books exist, and you find them. And so I'm not saying you should not look at the books, but it's just nice to have more representation.
Right. Right. And like you said, with that, since she doesn't have direct connection to her family, when people present her with these stereotypes, she really
Yeah,
doesn't have any way to combat that because she's not even sure if they're true. And so,
exactly.
no, or is it?
Yeah,
And if it isn't, she doesn't really have that to talk about. And so, as you mentioned, she struggles with these stereotypes and the prejudices about her own feelings about her mixed heritage. What do you hope that readers take away from reading the book? Either ones who come from a
yeah,
similar background or maybe those that don't.
sure. Oh boy. Well, I was just speaking to somebody the other day about this. About she's also mixed and Jewish, mixed racially and Jewish, and I wish I had had a manual when I was. She asked me like, "What were you like as a 12-year-old?" And I was like, "Oh boy," because I was so like moved by what other people thought about who I was. At that age, you're really trying to just fit in,
Mhm.
and I wish I had had more confidence to sort of be okay with who I
Mhm.
was. I mean, I know it's hard when you're that age, but I really wanted to have I really wanted to have a book
Right.
that would tell me like how do you navigate being from two different cultures and two different
Right.
families.
Mhm.
So what I hope some kids might take away from it is that no matter what be confident in yourself, no matter you know who you are and what challenges are. Like I want people to develop an identity. I want them, young people to develop their identity thinking it's okay. You know, there's a place for you. There's a place for you. And
Mhm.
then I hope to sort of open non-native people's hearts
Mhm.
to native experiences in the United States. Um,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I guess that's it.
And
Just
and
that.
also I would think that your book also goes a long way towards changing people's concept of what Jewish
Yeah,
communities are like,
yes,
and that there are quite a few there's a lot more diversity among Jewish communities than
yes,
I think most people think.
definitely. Yeah, I love I have an opportunity occasionally to speak to mostly non-Jewish audiences, and that is also just a thrill. Yeah, I like to present that there's like a whole diversity of Jewish people out there. And a lot of times people come up to me afterwards and they'll relate to the Jewish characters from their own faith, like
Mm,
Catholic, like a Catholic person, you know, just sort of being outside of the sort of
right,
Muslim people,
right,
like being outside of like the, you know, typical, I guess,
right, right.
person in America. Yeah, and that's wow, that's so heartwarming.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
just want to mention, you kind of mentioned it before, but just give a shout out to Heidi Rabinowitz, who's
Yes.
a series on multicultural kid blogs all about diverse Jewish authors, which of course
Yes.
I'm a part of. Um, so you kind of touched on this already, but what advice do you have for parents of mixed race children
Uh,
to help their children build this healthy sense of identity you talk about? It's like the,
oof. Yeah. It's well, I'm like my kids are 20 and 16. So they're still we're still seeing how it all ends
right.
up, but
Of course, you check in a few years, not just kidding.
let's hope we'll see. But so far, we really made an effort, first of all, to what they're getting older was what prompted me to reach out to my native family.
Mm,
Like in Two Tribes, Mia reunites with her native side after many years. And that was an experience I had as well. Um, and it was really, I really wanted them to know who their native family was on a personal level. That just
mm,
seemed like, of course.
right.
And and that's really that can be really
Mhm.
challenging, especially if you've been out of your family's life for a while. And sometimes it doesn't go well. I was lucky that my situation went well, but I haven't yet encountered a person who, even if it doesn't go great, like doesn't regrets it. You
Right.
know, sort of like reaching out again
Mhm.
to for your kids' sake, so that they understand like their whole identity. So that's number one. And then, you know, I think really embracing um, cultures and traditions. So, like in my Jewish world, we celebrate tons of stuff and we're really involved in the Jewish community. And I like to balance that
Mhm.
out by going to powwows, just so they know like there's ways that you can find how to celebrate both of these
Right.
places. And then within that, like I have to just be comfortable with their choices. Like
Right.
they might choose, you know, they might choose to dive in whatever, however they want to celebrate being Jewish is fine by me. However they want to celebrate being native, also fine. And it's not always what I would want or expect, but you know,
I love that you
at
say
least they're
that.
doing
As,
it.
as a parent of a teenager, I mean, that seems like that applies to so many like realms of parenting, but it's interesting to think of it specifically in terms of developing their identity that this is it, at some point it becomes their own journey and you have to let them make their own choices and it
Yes,
will develop over a number of years.
yes.
That's interesting to think about.
Yeah, and they might decide to go the exact opposite because they're teenagers. I don't
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Well, and so speaking about giving people these tools and helping people feel more comfortable with their identity, I know that you do workshops, when you do
know.
school visits and so on, and I was interested to see that some of them, you do workshops where you help children create their own identity stories, and I love that idea. I mean, what first of all, we usually, or at least I used to think about like heritage and identity as something you discover. It's just
Mm,
there, you discover it. But you're talking about creating your own identity story is kind of
yeah,
different.
Oh,
idea. But how do the kids react to this? Like, how do
oh,
they feel when they do it?
oh gosh. Oh boy, I love giving those workshops. Oh, they're the best. They're so great because they're so good at it.
Mm,
They're so good at it. It's hard at first. It's really challenging. Um, I try to start by saying, just to get them thinking about who they are, just sort of like, what is something that is true about yourself? And it can be as simple as like, I'm a brother, or like, I love dogs,
mm,
something that's like that. Um, and we go through story building. So we talk about a beginning, a middle, and an end, but we start with the end of what you know is true about yourself. Like,
mm,
I'm a dog lover, okay?
right,
And it's really challenging to then think about what you were before. And we sort of go through this process of thinking about like it, and part of creating the story is maybe even making it up. Like,
right,
what were you before you were a dog lover? I hated dogs. I was scared of them. But the really important part is right in the middle. When you're making a story, there's lots of ups and downs. And
right.
that makes a great story.
Mhm,
But it's painful to go through. And so I
mm,
think creating that identity story is sort of like thinking about like the ups and downs, and sort of understanding that like that's going to happen in life.
right,
It's hard in life,
right.
but that also makes a great story. And all of those challenges that you're going through are ultimately what's going to make you figure out who you are. That's
Mm,
that's the kind of basis of the workshop. And I kind of feel like if we just get to the point where like they kind of think about the ups and downs,
mm,
that's kind of like enough for me, because
yeah,
sort of thinking about how like, oh yeah, that's a really exciting story. However they think about it, so this little 7-year-old was like thinking about like Deadpool, like who was Deadpool before he was a
yeah.
super, before he was an anti-hero.
Mhm,
Um, but I just really wish I had like thought about how like this. I'm having a hard time as a kid figuring out how to
right,
be Jewish and Native, but that's okay.
right,
That's part of the process.
right. That's gonna
That
make a
and
really good story one day.
that's going to make a really good story, and you can tell it how you want to
Yes,
tell it.
yes.
Yeah, you can, if you are, it is completely within your power to tell that story how you want to tell
Mm,
it. Yeah.
I love that. I would
Yeah.
imagine that would feel very empowering for the kids.
I hope so. I did this once with the Bronx Community College,
Mhm,
and and we were talking about it as in terms of like interviews, when people ask you like, who are you?
right,
And I was sort of like, you know what? And that really felt great, because it was like, yes, you don't have, they're going to know what you tell them. You know what I mean? And like, you can
right,
tell them that story and make yourself be the hero.
right,
Yeah, it works for
mhm,
all stages of your
right.
life.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, I love that.
it's
Well,
fun. I love that too.
well, tell us about. I know you showed us a picture or a
Yeah,
drawing of a character you have in development. So, can you tell us any about what project this is for, or what you have coming up? Is there going to be a sequel to Two Tribes,
sure.
or are you going in a totally different direction? What are you working on?
Well, I'm not going in a totally different direction.
Okay.
Maybe I would love to do more with Mia someday, but that's a bit, I needed to take a break from something so personal.
Yeah,
Um,
I
so
imagine. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, but this is still personal. What I'm working on now is I really want to help kids thinking about who are feeling very upset about climate change.
Mm,
So it's sort of thematically about grief, and
mm,
how you can use your cultural traditions to sort of like, help you when you're feeling like everything's sort of going crazy. And the way that I'm going to tell that in a super fun way is that there's a character who's a very young, who becomes a sort of overnight climate activist celebrity,
mm,
and he incites the ire of a right-wing podcaster. And so he has to figure out how to navigate a space where people are fighting a lot, and how he can do that. Yeah, so I've been thinking about this for a while, and it feels
mm.
like very timely.
I was just gonna say it
I
seems very relevant
I
right
know
now.
it kind of does. And it's been like in the works for a few years, so
Mhm.
here we are.
When do you
But
think? Do you have an idea of when that might be out,
I'm
or
hopefully in 26. Yeah, I'm working on it now. Working to it coming out in 26.
amazing?
So
And is it
we'll
also
see.
a graphic
It will
novel?
also be a graphic novel. Yeah.
Is it saying also middle grade or?
Middle grade, middle grade. Yeah. I just love that age so much.
It is. Well, it seems like a really great time to explore all of these topics, that you're talking about, who
Oof.
you are and how you
Hmm.
are in the world,
Yeah.
right? Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. And hopefully, it's sort of, I also want to, like in Two Tribes, like the rabbi character who was, who,
Yes.
uh, he was, could be a little bit of a difficult character. I had to find a lot of love for him. And
Right.
I'm hoping to find the same love for I always want to find the love for all of these characters. So I'm hoping it's not going to be like a blue book, like a blue state book. Like I'm really hoping it's going to be like an everyone book.
Interesting.
Yeah, so I'm developing it. We'll see.
Well, I can't wait to see it when it
Thank
comes
you.
out, and I'll
Thank
keep an eye out for it. But thank you for taking the time to talk with us today. This is so fun.
you for your time and for inviting me.
And for anybody who joined us late, as always, this will be up on Instagram in just a few minutes, and later we'll have it on our YouTube channel. Thank you so much.
Great.
This is
You're
a pleasure.
so welcome. It's great
Yeah.
to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Bye, everybody.
Bye.